Welcome everyone to part 3 of this tutorial series where we're creating this Christmas tree in Blender. So this is where we left off in part 2. So in this part, the last part, we're going to be making the Christmas ornaments and we're going to be putting the Christmas ornaments on the tree. And then we're also going to create the fabric, little cloth around the Christmas tree, and we'll also make some presents, and then we'll do the rendering and the compositing to get the finished render. So let's jump right into it and create those Christmas ornaments. So I'm going to press Shift-C just to make sure the 3D cursor is in the very center of our scene. So I'll press Shift-A and I'm going to add a UV sphere to make the Christmas ornaments. I can now press G and Z and we're just going to bring that up. And then also using the object context menu, I can shade this smooth. So I want to create that little hook that's kind of on the top of the Christmas ornament. So I'm going to tab into edit mode and I'm going to press 3 or click right up here to go to the face select. I can now use the box select by pressing B and I'm just going to box select all these faces right here. And then I'll press S to scale and I'll scale them out a little bit. So then I can press 1 on the numpad to go to front view and I'm going to press E to extrude and then S to scale, and I'll just bring that down and scale it down a little bit. And I think I'll bring that down a little bit. I don't want it to be too high. All right, so I'm now going to press Shift-C again to make sure my 3D cursor is in the center. And I can press Shift-A, and I'm going to go right down here and add a cylinder. Now, right behind me, if you click on the Add Cylinder settings and just open that up, you can see that there is a vertice count right here. So I'm going to change the vertice count to 8 because we don't need it to be very high detail, because this is just going to be the little hook that is hooking around the tree. So I'll press G to grab and Z on the Z axis. We can bring it up, and then I'll press S to scale and we can scale it way down, and then I can press G and Z and we're going to stick it right there. And then what I can do is I can select this face right here. I'll go back to front view by pressing 1 on the numpad for front view, and I can press E to extrude and then E to extrude and R to rotate and G to grab, E to extrude, R to rotate, G to grab, and we're just going to make the hook. Now an easier way to do this is to just hold down the control key and then left click. So I'm just going to hold down the control key and left click, and I'm just going to make the shape of the hook just something like that. Maybe bring that down a little bit more. Okay, just something like that. Now that hook is a little bit big, so I'm going to tap back into edit mode and I'm going to press A to deselect everything. Then with my mouse hovered over this, I can press L and that'll select all of the linked vertices, and I can press S to scale and G and Z and just kind of bring that down just like that. All right, so now our hook is really small, and then using the object context menu, I can shade this object smooth. All right, so that was looking very good, although I do want to add a bevel in here because you can see the shading looks a little bit weird. So in edit mode, I'm going to press 1 on the top of my keyboard or click on the vertex select, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just Alt and select this ring of vertices. So I can now press Control B and just add a little bevel there, just like that. So now that looks much better. All right, so let's create the materials now for the Christmas ornament. So I'm gonna click right over here to the shading tab, and then let's just press period on the numpad to zoom over to the Christmas ornament. So I can now click on new, and I can just call this ornament, Christmas ornament. And then also I can go up into rendered mode just so that we can preview how that's looking. And then also it is really big right now, so I'll scale it way down so it's quite a bit smaller, just like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn the metallic value all the way up to 1, so it is a metallic material, and then I'm going to turn the roughness down to a 0.1 so it is very shiny, and already that look is looking a lot like a Christmas ornament. Now just like the Christmas lights, I want the Christmas ornaments to each have a different color. So I'm going to press Shift-A and I'm going to search for an object info node. Let's just drop it here, and then I can take the random and put that into the base color. And that way, when I duplicate this, each Christmas ornament is going to be a randomly different color. Now right now it's just using black and white and I don't really want this. So what I want to do is I actually want to go right over here, right here to this light right here. And then what I want to do over here is I want to make sure the light is selected. So I can now click on this color ramp and I'll press Control C, and that way we can copy this color ramp. Now I can go right back over here. I'm just going to go right back over here to these Christmas ornaments, and I'm going to press Control V, and that will paste the color ramp. So I can now drop this color ramp right in here, and already we now have a bunch of colors for our Christmas ornaments. Now I don't really want these exact colors, so I'm going to just change them a little bit. So this pink right here, I'm going to actually change it to a more purplish color because I think that looks better for Christmas ornaments. And then also I'm going to hold down the control key and click and add a new tab. And this tab, I want to change it to a white color. So if I go to the RGB for red, green, and blue, I want to turn the R and the G and the B all the way up to 1, and then I want to turn this all the way up, and that way it's going to be a white color. color. And then also right here on this yellowish orange, I want to make this a bit more yellow. So I'm going to turn it just like that so it's a bit more yellow. So now you can see if I just duplicate these, they're all going to be generated as randomly different colors. And then for some reason, it seems like a lot of them seem to be yellow. So I'm going to click and drag, and I'm just going to make this yellow a bit smaller, and that way there's less of a chance that it's going to turn yellow. And then I can kind of make these a little bit bigger, so there's a bit more chance of these turning those other colors. So I can now just select these other ones, and I'm just going to delete them, and I'll just delete this one because I just need one of them. Now another thing that I want to do to these Christmas ornaments is I want to add a texture. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a Voronoi texture. I'm just going to select it and just drop it down here. So I'm going to use this Voronoi texture in the normal to just give it a little bit of bump and give it a cool texture. Now before we do that, I'm going to select the Voronoi texture, and I'm going to press Control T, and Control T is going to add the texture coordinate and mapping, and that is using the other feature from the Node Wrangler. We turned on the Node Wrangler at the starting of the tutorial series. So I can now take this object on the texture coordinate, and I'm going to plug the object into the vector, and then using the other feature from the Node Wrangler, I can Control, Shift, and click on the Voronoi to preview it. Now I actually want to Control, Shift, and click on it twice because I want to preview this right here, and that is going to preview the color of the Voronoi. And then I don't want to use F1, so I'm going to click on the F1, and I'm going to change it to Smooth F1. So now you can see what that's looking like. So it's very similar, but basically the edges are kind of blurred. So now what I want to do is I want to take this and I want to put it into the bump just to give it a little bit of bump. So I'll take the color right here, and I'm going to plug that into the normal, and then I can Control, Shift, and click on the principled. Now when we do that, you can see it looks very black, and that is because we need to convert the color data to normal data, because this is purple and then this is yellow. So to convert it to normal data, I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a bump node. Let's just drop the bump node right in here. So I want the color to go into the height and then the normal to go into the normal. So now you can see what's happening. So it's looking all bumpy. Now the scale here, I want to change this to like a 40, and that way it's going to be much more detailed. And then it is very strong right now, and I don't want it to be that strong. So on the strength here, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to change it to a 0.03. And that way you can see that now it's just a very subtle texture, but it does look really nice on the Christmas ornament. All right, let's just press Control S again to save, and we're almost done with the material, but I just want to do one more thing. I want to add a different material on the top here. So I'm just going to go back out into solid view, and then I can tab into edit mode. So what I want to do now is I want to just select the top part, and then I want to give that a separate material. So I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and select this ring of vertices, and then I'll hold down the Shift and Alt key and I'll select that ring of vertices, and Shift and Alt and select that one as well. And then I can also just use the box select, and I can just kind of box select the top here. I can also go into wireframe and just box select that. All right, so that is what I want to be the different material. So now what I can do is I can click on the plus here to add a new material, and then actually I can click on the drop down and I can just add the star material, because the star material is very similar to what I want it to look like. And then with this selected and with the star material selected, I can click on the assign button, and now it's going to be assigned to those faces. So if I go into rendered mode now, you can see that this is now a separate material. Now it's kind of hard to tell, but if I duplicate this by pressing Shift D, you can see that now this top part here is the shiny gold, and then down here this is the other material. And then also something that I forgot to do with the modeling is that right here, this only has one loop of vertices. And so when we're shading it smooth, it looks kind of weird. The shading looks a bit weird. So I'm just going to tab into edit mode, and then I can Alt and select this ring of vertices. I'm now going to press Control B, and I'm just going to add a bevel and then just click to place that. So that looks much better. And if I go into rendered mode, you can see now those shading issues aren't there, and it looks much nicer. So let's hop right back over here to the layout now, and we can now just hand place the Christmas ornaments. So I'll press G to grab and S to scale, and I want to scale it down a little bit, and then I'll just kind of move it right in there. And really, I just want to hand place these. I think that hand placing them is the best way to go, because that way it looks the most realistic, and also you can place all of these hooks right here on the actual branches. So I'm now going to select this, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate it, but you can see because we're using the object info node, each one is going to be a different color. So I can just continue to duplicate this, and you can see that it's going to be a different color. So now I'm just going to move these around and just hand place them. So I can press R to rotate and rotate it over on the Z axis, and that way I can change the rotation of the hook, and then I can just hook these onto the branches. So I'm just going to continue to press Shift D to duplicate, and I'll just duplicate that. And then I can also double tap the R key, and I can do the trackball rotation and just kind of give it a random rotation. And then I just want to find a branch, and just kind of hook it on to the branch. Put one right there. I can press Shift D to duplicate, rotate this over, and press G to grab. Just kind of hook that on there. I'll press Shift D again to duplicate. Put that one right there. And I want to put some also more down here, kind of on the bottom of the tree. So I'll double tap the R key to trackball rotate that, and I'll just kind of rotate that over. So I'm just going to continue to do this all around the tree. All right, and there we have it. So I've just gone around and placed all of the Christmas ornaments on the tree. All right, so now we're going to be creating the piece of fabric which is around the Christmas tree. So to do that, I'm going to press Shift C to center the 3D cursor into the center there. And then I'll press Shift A, and I want to go to Mesh, and I'm going to add a circle. And then right behind me on the Add Circle settings right here, I'm just going to make sure the vertices is set to 12. So I can now press period on the numpad just to zoom over to it. So I now want to tab into edit mode, and I'm going to press E to extrude, and then I'll press S to scale, and I want to scale that down. Then I want to double tap the A key to select everything, and I'll press G and Z and just bring the entire thing up just a little. Then I can Alt select this again, and I'll press E to extrude and S to scale. Bring that down. I'll press G and Z, and we're going to bring it up a little bit. Then I'll press E to extrude, S to scale, and then G and Z. Bring that up a little bit more, and then E to extrude, and we'll bring it up on the Z axis, and then I will press S and scale it down. All right, that is looking pretty good. So I want to double tap the A key, and then I'll press Shift N to recalculate the normals. So now I want to give it some thickness and then also smooth it out. So over here on the modifiers, I'm going to click on Add Modifier, and I'm going to add the Solidify Modifier. And so that's going to give it a little bit of thickness. I think I'll turn the thickness up a little bit, maybe bring it up a little bit, just so that there's a little bit of thickness there. And then I can press Control 2, and Control 2 is the shortcut key for adding the Subdivision Surface modifier. And then using the Object Context menu, I can shade this smooth. Now right here, I want to kind of sharpen up some of these edges. So I'm going to press Control R to add a loop cut, and then click and then drag over and click to place that. Then I can press S to scale, and I want to scale that down a little bit. And then I think I need to double tap the A key to select everything, and I'll just press S to scale the whole thing down a little bit, and then bring it up. And then also, if you need to, you can turn the thickness up a little bit more so it's going around the tree. And then I'm just going to Alt select this loop and Shift and Alt and select this loop, and I'll press G and Z, and we're going to bring that up a little bit so it's a little bit higher. All right, something like that is pretty good. I think I just want to sharpen this edge up though. So in edit mode, I'll press Control R, add a loop cut right there. We're just going to drag it over and then click to place that. So that is very sharp. All right, that is looking very good. Let's press Control S again to save. So now I want to do some UV unwrapping so we can add a texture to it. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm actually going to go right over here to the very back of the tree. I'm now going to hold down the Alt key and just Alt select this ring of vertices. And then I want to press U, and I'm going to mark a seam. So now that I've added a seam there, we can pretty nicely UV unwrap this. So I'm going to double tap the A key to select everything, and then I can press U, and I want to click on Unwrap. So now that we've unwrapped that, we can click right over here on the shading tab, and then let me just press period on the numpad to zoom over to it. So I'm going to click on new, and I can just call this fabric. And then earlier in this tutorial series, we did turn on the Node Wrangler add-on. So with the Node Wrangler turned on, and with this principled selected, I'm going to press Control-Shift-T. And then earlier in this tutorial series, I talked about the textures that we're going to be using. So if you want to download the free textures, I'll have a link in the video description. So once you download the texture, you can unzip the zip file, and then you're going to go into the folder, and there's going to be all these files. So I'm going to click on the color, and then hold down the Control key, and click on the normal GL and the roughness. And then I can click on principled texture setup. And as you can see, using that feature from the Node Wrangler, it's going to automatically set up the material for us. So if I just go into the material preview, you can see that doesn't look very good. So we need to play around with the UV editing. So I'm going to click right over here to the UV editing tab so that we can play with the UV editing. So I'm going to press Z and move my mouse down to go into the material preview. And then this is our material. And then this is the UV editing. So I'm going to press A to select everything. And then I'll press S to scale right here. And I'm just going to scale this way up. And then I can also press G to grab. And I can just move this around if I need to move it around at all. Something like that. It should really just look good from the camera view. You can also rotate it if you want to. Maybe scale it up a little bit more and then just bring it over. All right, so just something like that. That is looking good. So I'm going to now go right back over here to the shading tab, and then I want to just play around with this material a little bit. So what I want to do is turn the sheen all the way up to 1, and then I want to turn the sheen tint all the way up to 1 as well. And this will just make it look a little bit more like a fabric material. All right, so it's now time to create the Christmas presents. So I'm going to click right back over here on the layout, and let's make those presents. So I'm going to press Shift C, and Shift C is going to center the 3D cursor in the center of the scene there. And I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to click on Mesh, and I'm going to add a cube. I can now press G to grab and Z on the Z axis, and I'm just going to bring that up. And then I can press S to scale, and I want to scale it down a little bit. So now what I want to do is tab into edit mode, and I'm going to press 3 on the top of my keyboard, or click right up here to the face select. So I can now Alt and select this ring of vertices. So we just want to select the vertices all the way around there, or the faces all the way around. And I now want to press Shift D to duplicate. And then immediately after that, I want to press S to scale, and then I want to scale it back and forth. So I'm going to hit X to scale it on the X axis. And I just want to bring this down because I'm creating the ribbon around the presents. So I'll just bring it down like that and then click to place that. And then I can also press S to scale, and I'll make everything a little bit bigger. Just like that. Now I want to make this its own object, so with this still selected, I'm going to press P, and then I'm going to separate by selection. So if I now tab into object mode, I can select this object, tab into edit mode, you can see this is its own object. So now what I want to do is add a Solidify modifier. So right here on the modifiers, I'll click on add modifier, and I'm going to go right down here and add a Solidify. And I can just turn up the thickness, and that way it's going to be thicker. And then if you need to, you can scale it down a little bit. All right, now this is very sharp here, so I want to add bevels to make it more realistic. So I'm going to click on add modifier, and we can go right down here and add the bevel modifier. And then right down here on the segments, I'm going to turn this up to like a 4, and then I can change the amount because I don't want it to be quite that big. So I can turn the amount down a little bit. All right, and then with the object context menu, I can shade this object smooth. And then I want to do the same thing for this object right here. So I'll click on add modifier, and we can add the bevel right up here, bevel. And then I can turn the amount up to like 4, the segments up to 4, and I can hold down the shift key and drag the amount to make it smaller. And I'll make it a little bit smaller, just like that, and then I can shade this object smooth. All right, so I can now select this object here, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate, and then I can press R to rotate, and then I'll press Z to rotate it over on the Z axis, and I'm going to type in 9, 0, and enter just to rotate that over. And then you can see that these are overlapping, so there's a face like right where the other face is, so there's kind of some glitching right there. So to fix this, I'll just press S to scale, and I'll just scale it down a little bit, just like that. So this is just a tiny bit smaller. All right, so I now want to model the ribbon. So I'm going to select this object right here, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate, and then Z on the Z axis, kind of bring that up. And then I can tab into edit mode, and I want to select this face, and then hold down the Shift key and select this face and this face. And then I'll press X to delete, and I want to delete faces. So now we just have this object selected. I can now press S to scale, and I want to scale it on the Y axis and just kind of bring that down, and then just kind of bring it down just like that. And then also it is a little bit too thick, so I'm going to take the thickness value and make that a bit smaller. So I can now press R to rotate and G to grab. We're going to bring that over, and I'm just going to model a simple ribbon. And then I can press 1 on the top of my keyboard or click right here to the vertex select, and I'm going to shift select these vertices. So I can now press E to extrude, and I'm just going to continue to press E to extrude, and I'm just going to extrude this around and just kind of make a simple bow or ribbon, just like that. Now you can see that because we have the bevel modifier, it's adding bevels right here, and so it's kind of blocky, and I don't want that. So I'm going to go right down here to the bevel, and then I can just click on this X button to delete it. So now we don't have any bevels there, and because we don't have any bevels, the shading looks really weird. So I'm just going to tab into edit mode, and then I just need to add some loop cuts. So I'll press Control R, click and drag, and add a loop cut there, and Control R, drag over, and then click to place that. So that is looking much better. And then also it still is kind of blocky, so I'm going to press Control 2, and Control 2 will add a subdivision surface with 2 levels. So that is looking much better. I can just kind of bring it over, and then I want to tab in edit mode, and I'm going to press A to select everything. I can now press Shift D to duplicate, and then R to rotate. And I want to rotate it over on the Z axis, and I'll just kind of bring it over and just kind of stick it right there. And then if you want to Alt and select some of these, you could just kind of bring these over just to make them look a little bit different. So just Alt and select these, kind of bring them over just like that. And then I also want to create 2 little ends of the ribbon kind of coming out here. So I'm going to Alt and select this ring of vertices. I'll press Shift D to duplicate and rotate it over, and I can just kind of bring it down, maybe bring it over just like that, kind of stick it in there. Then I can press E to extrude, and I want to extrude this out, bring that up and extrude it out again, then kind of extrude it down, and then extrude it over like that. You can also kind of rotate it a little bit if you want to. And then I need to add a loop cut on the front and the back, because you can see right there, it just kind of gets smooth on the edge. So I'll press Ctrl R, add a loop cut there, and Ctrl R, add a loop cut right there. And then also back in object mode, I need to shade it smooth with the object context menu. So I'll shade that smooth. All right, so back in edit mode now, I want to do basically the same thing on the other side. So I'm just going to hover my mouse over this object and press L, and that's going to select all of the linked vertices. I can now press Shift D to duplicate, kind of bring it over. And then I can also rotate this over and just kind of bring it over there and just kind of stick it into place. Now I want it to look just a little bit different. So I'm going to Alt select some of these loops and just kind of rotate them, just kind of bring them up so they look a little bit different. And then also I'm going to go into wireframe and just box select the end here. And then I can just kind of rotate this around just to make it a little bit different. Maybe rotate that up a little bit. And then also right here at the end, I need to go into wireframe. I need to Alt select this ring of vertices and Alt select that loop of vertices and just kind of bring it down into the present more. So now let's create the materials for the present. So I'm going to click right over here on the shading tab, and then let's navigate over to the present. It's right up here. So I'll press period on the numpad to zoom over to it. So I'm just going to select the main box of our present, and then I can click on new to add a new material. And then as I talked about in part 1 of the tutorial series, over here on Pixabay, I just typed in Christmas wallpaper, and you can just go through here and you can see that there's all this really good wrapping paper textures. So most of these are tileable and they look really good for wrapping paper. Here's some penguins and some trees and some stars and things. So you can of course use whatever texture you want for the wrapping paper of the present, but here on Pixabay they have a bunch of free textures and they're really great. So the link will be in the description if you'd like to use the same ones that I'm using. So I'm going to press Shift A and then I'm going to search for an image texture, and I'll just drop it down here. And I want to plug the color up to the base color. And then I can click on open to open up the texture. So the first one that I'm going to be using is this one right here. So it's on Pixabay. Again, link will be in the description if you'd like to download these. So I'll just click on this one and then click on open image. Now, if we go into the material preview, just to see this, you can see it doesn't really look very good. So what I need to do is I need to click over here on the UV editing, and then I'm just going to move up here so that we can see the present. So I need to press A to select the entire UV mapping, and then I'll press S to scale, and I'm going to scale that out quite a bit. Now also you can see that the orientation isn't quite right, so I'm going to press R to rotate, and I'm going to type in 90 to rotate it over by 90 degrees, but then it's upside down, so I need to hit negative to rotate it over by negative 90 degrees. And you can see right there it says rotation negative 90, and then I'll press enter, and then I can press S to scale, and I just want to scale that to a good size, so something like that is pretty good. So that's the material for our first present. Let's go over to the shading tab again. So now on these ribbons, I want to add kind of a gold ribbon material. So I'm going to click on new here, and I can just call this ribbon. And then I'm going to take the base color and I'm going to make it a shiny kind of yellowish, orangish gold color, make it very bright. And then I also want to turn the metallic all the way up so it's very shiny. And I think I'll make this base color a little bit less saturated and maybe a little bit darker because I don't want it to be super bright yellow, but something like that is pretty good. And then also I can click right here and drag and drop this color or drop this material onto these other objects. Now I want to give the ribbon material a very subtle texture. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for an image texture. I'll just drop it down here and we already have the image texture. If I click right here on the drop down, I want to just scroll down until I find the fabric normal. So I'm going to add in the fabric normal, and then I want to plug the color up to the normal. Then I need to add a normal map to convert it. So I'll press Shift A. I'm going to add a normal map node, and I'll drop the normal map node right here. So the UV unwrapping is really terrible, but you can see that now it's just giving a nice subtle texture to the ribbon. Now I actually don't want to use UVs. I want to use that easy texturing method that I like to use, and we won't have to use any UVs. So with this fabric selected, I'm going to press Ctrl T, and that is using the Node Wrangler add-on, and it's going to add the texture coordinate and mapping. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the object and put that into the vector, and that way we're going to use the object coordinates. And then right here, I'm going to change the flat to box, and then I'll change the blend value to a 0.2. So now if you zoom in here, you can see there's a nice texture all around, and it's very nicely and evenly placed around the ribbon. And then also on the scale here, if you click and then drag down, you can drag left and right to change the scale of that. So I do want it to be pretty small, maybe just something like that is pretty good. All right, so I'm going to select these presents. So I'm going to shift select this and then shift select this. And I'm also going to shift select these. So now that I have all of them selected, I want to duplicate them and make 4 different presents. So I'll press Shift D, click with my mouse wheel, drop it there, and then I can press Shift D and do the same thing, and Shift D and do the same thing. So we now have 4 presents, so I can now just change out the texture. So I'm going to click on this present right here. Now I want to add a separate texture, but before I do that, I need to duplicate the material. So right up here, I just rename this to present 1. I'm going to click on this button right here, and that is going to duplicate the material, but keep the same data. So I can now just call it present 2. And then I can just click on the folder icon to add a different texture. So for this second present, I'll be using this one right here. Again, links will be in the description if you'd like to use the same ones that I'm using. And then I'll just click on open image. Now for this one, you can see because the texture was a different shape, it's now looking all stretched. So I'm going to tab in edit mode and I will just press U to unwrap. And I'm going to click on the cube projection. And there we go. That looks really good. If you need to, you can go to the UV editing and you can just press S to scale and you can scale that and just change it if you want to. I'm just going to go back over here to the shading tab. I think that looks very nice. So we're going to do the same thing for these 2 presents right here. So I'll click on this one and then we want to duplicate it. So I'll click on this button right here and that's going to duplicate the material. And I can rename this to present 3. And then I want to click on this button right here to add a new texture. And then the third one is going to be this one right here. So I'll just double click on that. And then again, I need to tab into edit mode and I'll press U to unwrap and I want to do the cube projection. And that looks pretty good. You can play around with the UV editing if you want to, but I think the default does look very nice. All right, so let's just do the same exact thing. So I'm going to click on this one. We want to click on this button to duplicate the material, and I can just rename this to present 4. And then I can click on this button to add a new texture. And the last one that I'll be using is this one here, kind of this dark one. I'll open that up. And then again, I need to tab into edit mode and I'll unwrap this with the cube projection. So just press U to unwrap and I'll click on the cube projection. And then also this one is a little bit big. So I'm going to go over to the UV editing and I will just scale this up so it has a bit more detail. All right, just like that. So we now have 4 little presents. So what I'm going to do now is just box select these presents. And actually I should probably go back over to the layout so I can see them a little bit better. So I can now just take these presents and I can just place them around the tree. So I'll press G and Z, bring it down. And I think I'll also maybe scale the presents down a little bit. When I'm pressing S to scale, you can see it's scaling them by their individual origins, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to click right up here and I'm going to change this to median point. So it might have already been set to median point for you, but just set it to median point, and then I can press S to scale, and I can scale them all down and just kind of stick them right down there. So now what I can do is I can just kind of place these all around. So I'm just going to shift select all these objects, kind of bring them over, maybe rotate them, and just kind of give them a random rotation. Of course, you could create more presents if you want to. You could create like circular presents. You could create rectangle presents, but I'm just going to be making these ones just because I don't want the tutorial to go on too long. I just want to show you the main process of how to create the scene, but then in your own time, you could totally create a bunch of different presents or whatever you want to put under the tree. And then also if these presents are going on the cloth, you could just kind of rotate the present a little bit, just kind of rotate it so it's kind of going up on the cloth. So I'm going to shift select all of these pieces. I need to select that one as well. I'll bring this one over, maybe just rotate it on the Z axis so it has a random rotation. Just kind of rotate that up just like that. All right, that is looking good. So let's go into the front view just to see how that's looking. So I want to select these presents. So I'll just hold down the Shift key. Just shift select all of that and then also shift select all of those presents. And I'll press Shift D to duplicate, bring it over on the Y axis, and then I can just kind of rotate these presents and kind of stick them in the front of the tree there. Just bring that over, something like that. And then also it does seem like the ground is too far down. I don't know why it's that far down, but I'll just select the ground plane and I'll press G and Z and we're just going to bring that up. So I'm now just going to select all of the pieces to the present, just kind of rotate it over. Okay, I'm going to shift select all these pieces, kind of bring that over. Okay, just kind of stick that into place. Just like that. Let's go into the camera view. It should really look good from the camera's perspective. So I want to now select this present. I'll just shift select all the pieces to this present and I'll press Shift D to duplicate. And I'm just going to put one more present right here, kind of on the front. So just kind of rotate that and bring it up. All right, let's go into rendered mode and see how this is looking. So that is looking very nice. So we are almost done with the finished artwork. I just want to add a depth of field to the camera, and then we'll render this and do the compositing. So I'm just going to select the camera, and then I'm going to click right over here on the camera settings. So right down here, I want to turn on the depth of field just to give it a small depth of field. And then I'm just going to zoom in here to kind of one of these Christmas ornaments so that we can add the focus to it. So on the focus object, I'm going to click on the eyedropper, and then I'm just going to click on this Christmas ornament right here. So now if I go into rendered mode, I can kind of see how this is looking. I could also go into the material preview. That's kind of helpful. So now on the f-stop here, I can just change the f-stop value, and it's going to change the depth of field. So in this case, I think an f-stop of 1 works pretty well. That way, kind of the edges are just like a tiny bit blurred, but for the most part, the tree is all in focus. All right, so let's just press Ctrl S to save, and let's just go over a few render settings. So I will be rendering this as a vertical 2K image. You can of course render this at whatever resolution you want. And then also, if I click right over here on the render properties, the render samples, I'm going to change this to like a 200 just so that it's a pretty nice image. And then I'll be using cycles render, but you could totally use Eevee. Eevee actually works really well. It looks very nice. If I go into rendered mode, you can see that actually looks really quite nice in Eevee. All right, so just press Ctrl S again to save, and then you can click on render and render the final image. And the render is finished, so that is looking really nice. But we're not done yet. I do just want to do a little bit of compositing just to make the final image look really nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to click right over here on the compositing tab. And then also I don't need the timeline, so I'm going to click right here when the crosshair appears, hold down my mouse, drag up, and then drag down, and then let go to close the timeline. And then I can click on use nodes so that we can use Blender's compositing nodes. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is press Shift A, and I'm going to search for the glare node because I want to make the Christmas lights glowing. So I'm going to drop the glare node right there, and then I want to change it from streaks to fog glow. So fog glow, and then using the feature from the node wrangler, you can hold down the Control and Shift key and click, and that is going to preview it with the viewer node. Now in the background here, if you want to make the background bigger or smaller, you can press V, and V will zoom the background out, and then Alt V will zoom the background in. And then also, if you hold down the Alt key and click with your middle mouse wheel, you can move that around. So I'm just going to move it kind of over there so that we can have the nodes over here and the final result right there. And then you can see that the glare node isn't doing too much, and I do want it to be pretty bright. So on the threshold here, I'm going to change the threshold to 0.1, and that way it's going to be a little bit brighter. All right, so now I want to add a denoise node just to denoise the image because I did render this in cycles render. So I want to denoise the image, so I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to search for the denoise node, and I'll drop the denoise right here. And that's just going to smooth out the image and get rid of any noise. And then one more thing you can do if you want to make this image look very nice is you could just do a little bit of color correction. So if you press Shift A and go to the search, I like to add the RGB curves. So I'm just going to drop the RGB curves down here, and then I can Control, Shift, and click on the RGB curves to preview it. So you could make it a little bit more contrasty by kind of dragging up a dot here, dragging another one down here, so it's a little bit more contrasty. And then also you can play around with the red, green, and blue values. So if you want to add a little bit more blue or a little bit more green or any of those colors, you can kind of drag these out just to play around with the color correction a little bit. So let's Control, Shift, and click back on the glare to preview the final thing. And then one more thing I want to do to just make the final image look really nice is I want to add a vignette. So I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to add an alpha over node, and I'll drop it here, and then also I'll plug the viewer up to the alpha over. So I'm now going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a box mask, and let's drop the box mask right here. And then it's really hard to see the box mask because this alpha over is white. So I'm going to take this image and turn it down so I can see the box mask a bit better. So just click on the box mask, and you're going to see this little box here. And if you just make this box mask a little bit bigger, so what I can do is I can drag the width and the height value, and I'm going to make the box mask about the size of the image, but I'm going to leave a little bit of room kind of on the edges. So what I can now do is press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a blur node because we want to blur the box mask. If I Control, Shift, and click on the box mask, you can see it's just black with a white box. So I can now add the blur into it right here. And then what I want to do is blur this by probably about 200. So I'm going to turn both the X and Y values to 200. And then I can take this image and I want to plug that image into the factor of the alpha over. And then if I Control, Shift, and click on it, we'll just wait for that to load up. And so now you can see that it's kind of doing the opposite of what we want. It's adding the black kind of in the center. So what I can do is just take the glare and I'll plug that into the bottom image, and then the top image is going to be black. So we can just wait for that to load up. And now you can see there's just a nice little vignette around the edge of the shot. Alright, so let's press F11, and that is going to take us back to the render result. And then I want to click right here, and I'm going to click on the viewer node just to preview the final image. And then to save this image, you can just click on image, and then just click on save as. So that is it. That is the tutorial on how to create this Christmas tree in Blender. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and thank you so much for watching. And as I record this, it's about a month till Christmas, so Merry Christmas everyone, and I hope you have a great Christmas day. And I do plan on making more Christmas themed tutorials, so if you have any requests for Christmas tutorials, definitely let me know in the comments, and hopefully I can make a tutorial of it. So again, Merry Christmas, and I hope to see you in a future tutorial.